A little bit late this time. I'm so sorry. I completely forgot that I hadn't done it. But so the basically, this is your last essay for this class. 1,500 words minimum, type double spaced, MLA format. And basically, you're gonna choose two artifacts to analyze in comparison with each other. So in the last essay, you should have chosen one artifact to analyze, and this time you're going to choose two artifacts and analyze what their similarities and differences say about, the sort of group that they belong to. So you will need to have two artifacts. Both artifacts have to be cited as a source in the text and in a works cited page. These are considered primary sources. And then optional, you can, if you want, choose 1 to 2 secondary sources to support your analysis, but I cannot stress this enough, do not rely on it too heavily. There is a difference between using secondary sources to back up your evidence, and it is entirely another thing to simply summarize your source and have that be your paper, or to have the source come up with your claim for you. Your source should not be used in your claim at all, and it should definitely not be your claim. So you have to come up with, what you want to say about the comparison and contrast of these two artifacts, and then your source is just used to support what you have to say about your artifacts, not to say something for you. And that's a common problem that I see with these kinds of analysis essays when using sources, is that often people want to, just summarize their sources and what their sources have to say, and that's what we call a data dump, and you definitely do not want that. You have to be in charge of your own paper, your ideas, your claim, your analysis, your interpretation, and your observations of the artifact, and then just use the source to sort of give more secondary information or context, or to support, what you're saying. So it's a really common problem that I see all the time, even after I've said this. So make sure that you are not doing that, okay? So basically you're going to choose two artifacts. So an artifact, just to reiterate, is a specific thing, okay? So you don't want your for instance, an artifact is not a category. It is a specific item within a category. Okay? So when I say that you can choose from texts, what I mean by artifact is I mean the specific book or article or short story or poem. Okay? So you're not just talking about texts. You're talking about a text, and you're picking artifacts you're picking two artifacts that are, two books. You're not talking about text overall, okay? I think that was a little bit of a mix-up with the last paper, is that people thought that, when I said, images, that they were supposed to analyze images. Or when I say games, they thought that, I need to analyze games in general. And so I want to be really clear that when I say artifacts, I mean a specific artifact within these categories. So you could choose a book, article, short story, poem, a movie, a TV show, a documentary, a YouTube video, a song, an audio recording, a podcast, a video game, a board game, a card game, a phone game, a specific piece of art, a specific comic, a specific illustration, a specific photograph, a specific sculpture. You could choose a commercial, a print ad, a packaging label, a flyer. You could choose from places, so like to stores or restaurants or parks or offices or classrooms or buildings or whatever. To events, that you have personally attended, not something you read about, but something you personally attended. So like a concert you went to, or a charity event that you went to. You could choose a specific website, like a social media site or a blog or a commercial website. You could choose internet posts, so a specific social media post, a specific selfie, a specific meme. And, you can choose from within that, like, you don't have to choose a movie. You could choose a character in a movie, or you don't have to pick a TV show. You can do an episode of a TV show. You could do an album instead of a specific song. Services artists focusing on their artistic output and not their social life, because that would require a lot of research and you would be way too reliant on your research. You would look at what they've put out and talk about their artistic output rather than their social life, etc. Okay? You can choose any two artifacts to analyze in comparison with each other. I do not recommend that you compare the book with the movie. Okay? That's one I get a lot. People want to compare the book and the movie. The fact is, the book's always better, the movie's always worse. And that's really all there is to say about it. Now, there have been times when somebody finds a more nuanced way to compare book and movie in terms of, like, they treated this theme differently, or they, changed their focus, or they changed the central message, or something like that. I had a student who wrote about, a book that was written in, like, the early 1900s, and then there was a movie made in, like, the 70s, and so the social context was different, and so they changed the focus to be more relevant to today's social content. So that might work, but just going like, the book's so much better than the movie because it has so much more detail. Like, that's not really a good comparison, and you'll see why in a minute when I talk about that. But you can choose from two different categories. So you could choose a song and a movie, or a video game and a YouTube video, or, so you can mix and match, but make sure that your two artifacts are specific, not about, books in general, but about a specific book, okay? Now, I choose the word artifact to convey that whatever you choose must have a sensory component. You have to be able to observe it using one or more of your own five senses, most likely seeing and hearing, but possibly touch, taste, or smell. So you have to be able to interact with it yourself, okay? So you're not just, so for instance, when I say events, it can't be something that you just read about, because you can't use your own senses to observe, okay? So it has to be something that you can interact with directly, okay? And let me know if, you have any questions about artifacts, and, like, if you choose something that isn't on the list, make sure to run it past me. And also, if you just have if you want to run your idea past me for artifacts to make sure that they are artifacts and not just sort of categories or too broad or too vague, please just send me an email. I'm happy to let you know if that's something that could work. All right, so you need a claim. The claim has to be made about what this comparison means. It's not enough to simply point out similarities or differences. You have to make a point about what that set of similarities and differences mean as a whole, okay? So you can't just say, oh, well, here's a bunch of similarities and a bunch of differences, and that's my paper, and, because you have to be making a point. That isn't really a claim, you're just sort of observing the differences and similarities. You have to make a point with your observations of similarities and differences. So there has to be a purpose and a meaning behind it. And if there isn't, that's a big issue. You have to say, like, here's the similarities and differences, and here's what it means that they have these similarities and differences. So you could be talking about genre, because these two have these similarities, they're within the same genre, but here's how they work within the genre to point out different things. Or you could say one influences another, that you could say, here's the similarities and differences, and here's how this one influenced this one based on the similarities, but here's how this one, parted ways with the first, to make it their own, right? So those are some possibilities. There are other, sort of purposes that you could be serving, but, those are just a few examples. Your claim also cannot be simply evaluative, one is better than the other, or descriptive, one's about this, the other's about that. So it can't be evaluative because evaluations can't be proven by evidence, okay, because it's a matter of taste or preference. So again, whatever it is that you claim has to be something that you can back up with evidence, that you can prove the validity of your claim, of your, of what you're saying. Evaluation just says, I like this one better than I like this one. And that's not to say that you can't talk about that can't be there, but you have to have an extra component to it other than just one is better. And that can't be your claim. Okay, so you can say, here's, what's, I like this one better, but that can't be your claim. And your claim can't simply be, again, like I said, this one's about this and the other one's about that, and that's different. At which point I'm going, yeah, and what's your point? So what? And every paper has to have a so what, It has to be analytical. It has to say something about these artifacts. By comparing and contrasting them, you have to reveal something about them that you couldn't have seen otherwise, right? That you only understand certain components of this one if you compare it to this one. So that doesn't mean that you can't include evaluation or description, and maybe you should have both evaluation and description within there. But that shouldn't be all you do. Your claim has to have an analytical element as well. Okay. So once you make your claim, you have to back up that claim with evidence. Make sure you're choosing your evidence wisely. Don't just put in all of your observations, you want to keep your observations specific and relevant. So you use specific observations to back up your claim and make those observations relevant to the claim. You can't just use broad generalizations or summary to back up a claim. So to that end, keep in mind that you're not going to cover everything there is to say about your two artifacts. That's expected. I know there are other interesting things, and sometimes it sucks that our interesting things aren't relevant to our claim and we can't talk about them, especially if it's something we're really interested in and we really like. But if it's not relevant to your claim, cut it, okay? If it is not relevant to your claim, it has no business being in your paper, and it needs to go. So you're covering one point of comparison between the two and giving only the relevant information to cover that point. And a brief reminder to introduce both artifacts in the introduction, give a brief summary or description of each, and then move on. I do not need a comprehensive summary of either. Don't make the mistake of simply summarizing both of your artifacts and not having a point to it, okay? Only give me the information that I need in order to prove your claim, okay? And that can be hard to do in a few sentences, but I need you to keep it to a few sentences, okay? In the introduction. So you introduce both artifacts in the introduction, and then you give your claim, and then you move on to your analysis, to your compare and contrast. Now, I often get the question about organization. Should I, have a paragraph about one and then a paragraph about the other? I tend to say that that's not usually the best structure. It kind of depends on what you're trying to do, but in most cases, the best structure is going to be to organize it thematically. So to pick a specific thing within your artifacts to analyze in comparison to each other within one paragraph, okay? And then in your next paragraph, you're looking at a different aspect in both of your artifacts. So I would say have both of your artifacts represented in each of your paragraphs. Okay. That's my recommendation. Obviously, if that doesn't work for what you want to do, don't do that. But in most cases, I think that's going to be what works best. Like the others, these have some alternative, like the last one, this has a few alternatives. You can use artifacts that you have previously analyzed and then compare them to each other. You can work with a partner if you work roughly equally. If you and your partner have previously analyzed similar artifacts, you can use those previous artifacts as long as they're seamlessly combined. Basically that's just a collaboration. You're working with another person, you're both, sort of just writing at the same time, and you're making decisions about what's going to be in the paper together. You are working together to, revise the essay to make sure that it's something that both of you are satisfied with. You can work in a group of 3 if you have an additional page, so an additional 250 words. Again, I forgot to change the list to word count, but that's about 250 words is about a page, provided you write an additional 250 words and you contribute roughly equally. You can write, let's say, I'll take off 250 words. If there's some kind of additional related material of the writer's own creation, again, you have to create those. And as long as said additional material has been approved by me ahead of time. If you just put in material and I haven't approved it ahead of time, I might not consider that to be part of it. And so that can be a danger of that. So make sure you get it approved by me before you do it. I will also take off 250 words if you also create 3 side-by-side annotated images and figures that point out specific evidence in context. And you have to refer to these images in the text to make them relevant. So you have like 2 images side by side and you say, see, look at these 2 things are very similar, but here's how it's different. Then in your paper you go, looking at figure 1, you can see these similarities and these differences, and here's what all of that means, okay? According, in terms of my claim. You can also take off 250 words if you create a video or audio file where you play specific evidence with your own voiceover commentary. This is similar to the, annotated images, but you're just narrating that instead of writing it. You can compare 3 artifacts provided you do not use the 3rd artifact as an excuse to add length. Do not choose 2 artifacts, run out of things to say before you reach the word count, and then go, well, I'll just add in something else, because it's gonna feel tacked on, okay? Especially if you go with the structure that I recommend, which is to have each artifact represented in each paragraph. That, if you just add on to the bottom another artifact to add length, that's gonna feel really tacked on. So don't do that. But if you have an idea where you're like, well, this is sort of like a trilogy instead of a duo, like it really works better if I'm analyzing all 3 than if I'm just analyzing those 2, then do that. Fine. I don't care. That works for me. And you can another option is that you can present a recorded multimedia presentation of no less than 10 minutes long that utilizes the visual medium to the fullest advantage, shows visuals to make a point. Visuals can be anything from pictures to very short video clips, side-by-side comparison, and is thoroughly engaging. See me for more details if you choose this option. Same as last time, just basically you create a visually stimulating PowerPoint or Google Slides, and you present it like I'm doing now with the assignment. You basically do a screencast where you are in a corner of the screen and you are presenting information verbally instead of with words. And again, if you have an idea about an alternative assignment you'd like to try, run it past me and I will consider it. I have had people come to me in the past with ideas, not often, but I have. And when they do, I add it to my list of alternatives if I think it's a good idea. And criteria, you can read that for yourself. It's the same as always. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Just looking at our schedule, I want to make sure you guys know when all of this is due. So the first draft is going to be due September 27th. That is next Wednesday. Okay. So next Wednesday is when the first draft is due. You'll post it on the first draft and peer workshop discussion board, and then give feedback to the 3 essays you were assigned on by Friday of next week. And then the week after that, we'll do group conference. Actually, at this time, I think I'm going to just do an in-class full class workshop. So instead of group conferences. So that's what we'll do with that. So you'll have 2 weeks to finish this one. And then the final draft will be due October 5th. Okay? And then we'll be done with our essays, and then basically you'll just work on getting them all ready for the portfolio. So we're almost done, and I appreciate you guys and all the work that you've done. I know this has been such a quick class, but it is what it is. All right, so that's it for now, and let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. Email me. Do not hesitate to email me about any questions that you might have, and I will see you guys on Tuesday. All right, bye guys.